Hello, hello, and welcome to Anime Initiative, comics, books, best, and really only place where we talk all things anime, manga, webtoons, otaku, and more. My name is Megan Peters, and I am the host of this program, along with my good friend and coworker Evan Valentine, who is here today. How you doing?
Hey, good. Always a pleasure. Always great, and especially considering our main topic, I am very excited for today's episode.
I know, I'll let that be a little spoiler. Obviously, we are missing Nick here today. He is currently preoccupied with a visit to the doctor. So you know what? He is all good. He's living his best life. He is not here today, but he will be back because as we promised, we are approaching the fall season for anime, and Nick is our resident coordinator of our previews for every season, and he has been working extremely hard on the fall
Mhm.
2024 preview. So look forward to that. But we are here today, myself and Evan, to talk about all of the news that has happened in anime for the last week. And surprise, surprise, there was a bunch. As always, if you were not, locked into the anime fandom like myself and Evan are, we had the Aniplex Online Festival happen, just a couple days ago, where we got a ton of updates on upcoming series, Solo Leveling, Blue Exorcist, Fate Strange Fake, so many good things. We've also gotten some updates on some series that we love, like Bleach, and we also
Mhm.
had the let me say this correctly, the theatrical premiere of Dandadan,
Mhm.
which both myself and Evan have seen. So we will be talking about it on our news rundown. Then we're going to take a quick break, pay for the show. And when we come back, we are going to be talking about Evan's favorite topic, as we've discussed on this show many times, Berserk. If you've not been paying attention, Berserk has been in the headlines quite often this past year for
Mhm.
a very viral, very epic looking fan anime that has now officially been canceled due to some official pushback. So we're going to have a discussion about the tiny legal trouble that
Mhm.
fan anime and fan projects face. But first, we got to go through our news rundown. We're going to start with the Aniplex Online Festival because, man, Sunday, Aniplex, which is obviously, for those who don't know, a major distributor and licenser for anime, and can help do co-productions. They released a ton of footage of shows that are coming
Mhm.
up. So we got a teaser for Solo Leveling season 2, obviously. So we were able to reunite with Jinwoo, which I'm always
Mhm.
excited to do. The voice acting on Solo Leveling, man,
So
it's
good.
insane, right?
For both the Japanese and English dub, I think that they're both and I have kind of watched both. I mean, more so I watched the original Japanese dub, but I
Yeah.
also have heard the English one, and yeah, they're both killer. They both really are. This is a very emotional show, and both of the dubs do
Yes.
really well at conveying that.
Yes, I admit I really enjoy the English dub of Solo Leveling. Alex
Mhm.
Lay is the voice
Mhm.
of Jinwoo, and man, I've been able to speak with Alex several times, regarding his work and his voice. Hearing him speak in person, just like his normal voice, it's such like a trip for me because I'm like, you just like it's so weird when you talk to him because it's just like, wow, all I can hear is the anime. But thanks to Aniplex Festival, we learned that Solo Leveling not just released kind of a little teaser for season 2, but we were also told that Solo Leveling is getting a theatrical release. So we're going to be
Mhm.
getting Solo Leveling Reawakening, which is basically a recap, kind of a little bit of a remaster, but mainly a recap of season 1 to get fans kind of prepped for season 2. I think
Mhm.
it's a great idea because a lot of the kind of the first half of Solo Leveling for me was really slow. It
Yeah.
felt like it really took a minute to get good. And we've talked about, of course, like the tried and tested anime rule. You have to watch the first 3 episodes before you lock into a project. It felt like it took a lot longer for Solo Leveling season
Oh,
1 to
sure.
get to that point. So I think doing a recap to help streamline is an excellent idea. So
Mhm.
currently, we know that in Japan and South Korea, that movie will be released. We have no word yet on the United States, but we have hope.
Yeah, there's something to be said for and I mean we're going to talk about one later on the show, but there's something to be said about the success of compilation anime films in general,
Mhm.
and it's just like turning on the money machine and the money machine goes burr. You don't have to do, you don't have to really, like, you just have to take the animation that was originally there and just like throw it on the screen and people will see it. Because
Absolutely. We're simple. Give us pretty animation and we'll watch it. So beyond Solo Leveling, we did also get an update on Puella Magi Madoka Magica, which I love saying that full anime title name. Everyone's like, oh, it's just Madoka Magica. No. Puella Magi Madoka Magica. Say it right.
Gotta say the whole thing.
Say the whole thing. It's fun. For those who do not know, there's currently a kind of a sequel, kind of a spin-off anime that's in the works for Madoka Magica that is based on a mobile game that was released for the franchise that kind of follows up on all of our favorite characters from the main series. For those who do not know, Madoka Magica, I hesitate to say a lot about the show if you've not seen it. All I can tell you is like you need to go watch the first episode. It has kind of like a twist spoiler to it on the level of like what we saw from the premiere of Oshinoko. Like you don't see it coming. It takes the concept of magical girls and that kind of shonen aspect of like Sailor Moon and even Cardcaptor Sakura, takes it, flips it on its head, gives it like a straight like I don't even know what kind of twist. A twist you don't see coming, essentially. So we are getting a new anime series that is based on that mobile game. So it is going to be considered canon as we're kind of going through some of the weird magic flashbacks that you could expect from Madoka Magica. Beyond that, we also got a trailer for Blue Exorcist Season 4, which is Beyond the Snow arc, which I believe Studio Voln, or I don't know if it's Voln or Voln, is, they're kind of overseeing Blue Exorcist right now. Originally, when the anime premiered, A1 Pictures was overseeing the series, but it is now transitioned hands because we've had kind of some weird hiatus gaps with Blue Exorcist. Also, Aniplex, of course, had to revisit the Fate franchise. We got an update on Strange Fate, which has a movie coming up. It's going to have its U.S. premiere in Los Angeles, not too long from now. And, some other franchises like Rurouni Kenshin, the Kyoto Disturbance arc was given a trailer. Unfortunately, no Demon Slayer updates were given at this event. But to be fair, we did get Demon Slayer content earlier this year, so they needed to take a break.
Yeah, I think with Demon Slayer especially, we're probably not going to hear any. I don't think we'll hear anything this year. I mean, that's a safe bet.
They'll wait until next year when the movies get closer. For all of this content, if you're listening, if you're watching live to us, you can pause. You can find all of our coverage of the Aniplex Online Festival at comicbook.com. Nick was spearheading the charge on Sunday evening. I came in to help. We're all pitching in at this point. Plenty of great content to go through. So, as always, Aniplex delivered. But now to move on to a different kind of announcement. I don't know if you've ever watched this, Evan. And I've written about this several times because I just want to make sure people know what they're getting into. Finally, there's a Studio Ghibli movie streaming on Netflix here in the United States. That's a key point here. In the United States, the exclusive carriage license for Ghibli films is handled by Max, but there's always been a rather prominent movie missing from that catalog. Well, now it's on Netflix, and that movie is Grave of the Fireflies.
Yep.
You ever watched Grave of the Fireflies, Evan?
Yes. It is the most soul-rending, heart-wrenching movie, not just like anime movie, but like one of the most heart-wrenching movies of all time. So I would be remiss to think. I think there are a couple of movies that I've seen, anime or otherwise, that really just completely destroyed me emotionally. And the Grave of the Fireflies is way up there, I would say.
So for those listening, Grave of the Fireflies was one of the first two films that Studio Ghibli officially released as a feature film. My favorite fun fact about Studio Ghibli is when it first posted its first feature movies back in 88 or whatever. It was a 2-part feature, so people went to theaters in Japan to see these two movies back to back. One was directed by Hayao Miyazaki and one was directed by Isao Takahata, who is obviously the director of Grave of the Fireflies. The first movie they showed was My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh my god, no.
And then there was an intermission, and then Grave of the Fireflies aired. which
Oh no.
talk about emotional whiplash. If you are not familiar with Grave of the Fireflies, it is. I mean, I am 100% with Evan. I'm a huge movie buff. I love film. I really love war films.
Mhm.
It's dark, and those films are always incredibly difficult to parse. It's one of the reasons why I think Godzilla minus one
Mhm.
works well given its backdrop in the aftermath. Well, Grave of the Fireflies works very similarly. It is set in the shadow and like the shadowing days of the Pacific War for World War II, as we are following a pair of very young siblings living in Japan as they are kind of processing their youth as they are living in the final days of the war and what that means for them. It is an incredibly beautiful movie in terms of
Mhm.
animation, in terms of cinematography and photography, but it is not your normal Studio Ghibli film.
No.
I feel like there's a lot of this misconception, at least in the public's eye. If you see Studio Ghibli, you think, oh, cute forest sprites,
Yeah.
like cute little Totoro. You think of like the boy and the heron, like the cute little sprite things going around. Even things like Princess Mononoke, which have a more
Mhm.
serious tone to it, or Nazca Valley of the Wind. Like there's still that lighthearted element, fantastical element to it.
Yeah.
That is not the case with Grave of the Fireflies. I cannot stress this enough. If you added that to your queue because you were like, oh, a Studio Ghibli film is on Netflix, I'm going to have a nice family evening with my kids or with my pets or just myself, just, eating dinner and watching a nice, fun film, you are in for a surprise.
It's
It's not a lighthearted affair at all. It is absolutely worth the watch. I cannot
Mhm.
recommend you watch Grave of the Fireflies enough, but I must give you that caveat. That movie is not your typical Ghibli movie.
It's also, and you kind of mentioned it, Megan, but yeah, I mean, it's required viewing. I
It
think
is.
that like
It truly is.
it really is, like,
Whether
aside
you
from
like anime or not. If you're
yeah.
listening to this podcast and you don't like anime, hi, welcome. We hope we convert you. But if you do watch anime, it's required reviewing. It's
Mhm.
required viewing no matter what.
Yeah, it it not only goes into this I don't even want to say amazing story. It's just like very sad and depressing
It's very raw.
story.
It is a
It's a
very
very
raw
raw, and
movie.
it kind of is a snapshot in time of that era to kind of give you an idea of like the ravages of war, how bad it got, as well as just like following these two characters who are being sent to hell and back effectively. Yeah, I mean, it's so bad. I mean, it's not bad, but it's so bad in terms of what they have to go
It
through.
is.
But it is,
It it's gonna make your heart hurt. You might not
yeah.
cry, you might cry, but it's gonna like squeeze at your heart. It's gonna put a pit
Mhm.
in your stomach. So I had to address there is a Ghibli film on Netflix. Please watch it, but please
Yeah.
go into it fully aware that this is not My Neighbor Totoro. That's not what that is. Please be aware of that. So with that said, we can transition to our next news topic, which there's really no way to segue out of Grave of the Fireflies. So I'm just gonna say Ichigo Kurosaki, favorite, our favorite Soul Reaper. For those who do not know, Bleach turns 20 years old this year,
Ooh.
which is like really wigging me out. It's
Mhm.
really freaking me out. Bleach is turning 20, and we are on the cusp of Thousand Year Blood War returning for season 3. Just had a
Yes.
special event in Japan where basically the team behind Bleach kicked off the fact that they're starting this 20th anniversary celebration. So we got some cool, key art that the series creator Tite Kubo created, but kind of the biggest thing that is happening right now in the space is a rumor that we have to address because the rumor is kind of populated on social media by somebody that those of you listening to this podcast who are familiar with Marvel or DC, you know may know this name. There is a user, an influencer in the social media space, Daniel RPK, that has reported allegedly that a live action Bleach movie is in talks
Mhm.
at Warner Brothers. So we have to stress This is a rumor. Nothing is like substantiated about this. There's no official word about what's going on. But you know, that is the rumor.
Mhm.
Now we do have to make the notice as well. This is not the first time Bleach could have gotten, you know, we have gotten a live action Bleach movie before from
Yes,
Warner
yes.
Brothers Japan.
Mhm.
It was a Japanese production, so it didn't have any ties to like the you know the Hollywood production that Warner Brothers Discovery you know operates. It was a movie done in Japan with a Japanese cast in the Japanese language. I think it was a really good movie. I mean,
Fairly decent. Mhm.
it pares down a lot of
Yeah.
you know the first kind of main saga of Bleach, but like I thought it was a pretty good. You know,
Yeah.
so what do you think about this rumor?
Well, I think this goes back again, and we've talked about it in the past, but this kind of goes back again to the floodgates being opened by Netflix's One Piece. I think that like
Mhm.
the fact that that became so popular and big, also, and to the same, if not bigger extent, Avatar: The Last Airbender, as well. But like Lionsgate confirming that they're making a live action Naruto movie. I think that there's the idea that this will happen, I think is sound. I think that like Bleach kind of would work. I mean, we saw it work as you mentioned with the Warner Brothers Japan one.
Mhm.
And that was actually pretty solid. I doubt we'll see a sequel to that.
That's what
Even
I was wondering when this rumor first popped up. I was like, "Are we talking about a sequel?" Because the director of the live action Bleach film from Japan, I mean, he has said multiple times. I even interviewed him at the film's
oh,
premiere in New
cool.
York many years ago. You know, he really stressed. He was like, "If the film is successful, and I'm given the okay and a budget," you know, he was, you know, said that he would love there to be a follow up to the movie that he created. Obviously, it's been several years since that has happened, but like in my opinion, if the Full Metal Alchemist live action movies could get sequels, then I feel like this
Yeah,
one certainly
those
deserves it. Just been a little bit. I mean, I still think the timing works out because obviously we are in the throes of Bleach's 20th anniversary. There's buzz around the manga. There's certainly buzz around the anime, given
Mhm.
Thousand Year Blood War. Just the question is there enough of that to kind of, you know, appease the executives and the number crunchers, you know, behind studios like Warner Brothers Japan or even Warner Brothers Discovery, the larger conglomerate, you know, that works in Hollywood.
Mhm.
To push forward a project like this. So I don't know. I really enjoyed the first live action
Yeah.
adaptation. The problem with me in anime adaptations, and I've said this before. You know, I said this pre One Piece. I said this post One Piece. You know, and I will continue to say it. If you're trying to adapt a anime TV series into a movie, pacing is never going to work out. And that's the
Mhm.
reason why I am so it's one of the main reasons I feel like Netflix's One Piece works. Even though the pacing is sped up and they have to cut out a lot of material, they're
Yeah.
able to have roughly 8 hours of content in season 1. That gives them so much more space
Mhm.
to work with the pacing of an anime, especially as we've said, even in this episode already. It takes a little bit for you to get into the anime, like storytelling narrative pacing. And when you start to speed up that pacing to accommodate live action adaptations, especially in a movie where you have such a limited, you know, runtime, that's where a lot of mistakes can happen incredibly easily, even if you are a very skilled screenwriter, director, producer. You know, I have shared this fear about the Naruto series. If Bleach is doing a similar thing, I don't know how it's going to go. It's different for projects like, you know, Hollywood's, you know, long discussed Akira adaptation.
Oh
Because
yeah.
it's a movie format to a movie format. The pacing is a little bit more one to one in terms of runtimes. It's incredibly different when we're talking a movie to a TV show and TV show to movie.
I would love to add. You mentioned mistakes, and I would love to add, especially in pacing. One of the things, and I would not recommend people watch these, but it kind of from a morbid curiosity standpoint, the live action Attack on Titan movies that came out of Japan,
Ooh.
those ones, when you look at pacing, they come up with their own, those movies come up with their own idea of the origin of the Titans and what's going on that's different from the original manga and anime. And it is, I will not spoil it, but it is wild. If you want to check that out and like just be blown away, like it is, they are not very good movies, but they work very well in that sense of just like, what is happening? Why is this happening? Why did they decide to go this way, etc., etc.? They are super perfect examples of just like, here's what can go wrong.
Yeah, it is certainly there's not a tried and true method. In the same way, there's not a tried and true method to make a hit comic book movie. There's certainly a better formula than there was, 20 years ago, but it's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with anime and manga adaptations as they're coming to live action, whether that is with, a Japanese production or an American production, or anywhere in between. So we'll see how it goes. That's currently the rumor floating around. I would not be opposed, but again, we'll just see where Ichigo takes us. So our next topic I gotta address, and we mentioned it a second ago. Our I affectionately call it my Lord and Savior of the fall anime season. Ignoring the fact that Dragon Ball Diamond's coming out, and I'm very excited for that. Dandadan, the countdown is on. We are very much less than a month away from Dandadan making its television premiere. But you know what? Just to tease fans, the kids at G Kids brought Dandadan First Encounters, which is the kind of theatrical premiere of the anime, brought it to theaters in the United States. This past weekend where fans were able to watch, I believe, like the first 3 episodes, as well as some like exclusive interview content with the actors and the director, Fugiyama Shiro. So I know I have my opinion about Dandadan, but Evan, I understand you have seen the Lord and Savior at work. How are you feeling?
I did. And I will also call it the Lord and Savior. I think that one of the things that when I was going into this, I'm familiar with the original manga. I've read a couple of chapters and attempted to keep up with it and everything. But I will say that after seeing these first 3 episodes, I do think that this has the potential to be the next big thing. I think that this could fill, like, obviously Demon Slayer's still going, but I think that we are going to see a lot of the animation from this. A lot of the story beats are going to go viral. We're going to see them all over TikTok. We're going to see them all over social media. I am blown away at what Science Saru was able to accomplish with this. I think that it's some of the best animation I've ever seen in my life. I'm amazed it's just for a TV show, honestly. Like, if they said that this was originally just supposed to be like a movie that was coming to theaters, I would really believe that. Science Saru just works amazingly well with the material that they have from the original manga. And as a quick, I guess we should talk really quickly about like what Dandadan is, what its story is. The story is effectively about 2 high school kids. One is a boy, one is a girl. The boy is named Okarun, and he is obsessed with UFOs, aka UAPs, as he says during the first 3 episodes. Meanwhile, there is Momo, who is a girl who is obsessed with the supernatural, ghosts. She has a grandmother who is a spirit medium, and the 2 of them challenge one another. Momo has to look for aliens, while Okarun has to look for ghosts. Okarun runs into a creature known only as the Turbo Granny, who he is cursed by, while Momo runs into 3 aliens that are all of these creatures are so nuts. That, like, really, I'm not doing it justice in terms of how mind-bending they all are, but it's effectively, you got peanut butter in my chocolate. That's how this goes. And you just follow them along as Okarun is kind of cursed by the Turbo Granny, which gives him a lot of powers, but comes with a very, very big drawback. While on the flip side, Momo is struggling with some new psychic powers that have emerged. And actually, one of the things that the movie talks about during those interviews is how the creator of the original series wanted this to be not just focus on one protagonist, but have this be like about the two protagonists that are bouncing off one another. And
Mhm.
there is without going into spoilers, there is a very funny reason. Not funny, but there is a very unique reason as to why they have to be around each other and why they can't, like, they can never even leave each other's sight, which I thought was such a cool, like, added twist
Mhm.
to this whole thing. Yeah, cannot recommend enough. I wish that they had made this available, like they had more showings, because I know that, like, near
Mhm.
me I had about 90 minutes to kill, and they had like one showing per theater in the afternoon, and then, like, so I would hope that they would have more, but hey, I'll take what I can get. I think I nailed it.
Yes. So I can say, I was given the opportunity a little over mm, it's been over. I mean, it was back in the end of June, I
Hmm.
believe, that I was able to watch this, the first couple episodes of Dandadan, which one speaks to the amazing production schedule that Science
Yeah.
Saru is operating under. But as soon as I watched it, it was just like on the confines of my laptop, and I was immediately sold. I love the Dandadan. Um, I love the manga. I think Yukino Butatsu, who is the creator of the manga, one is a phenomenal artist,
Hmm.
but he just isn't afraid to get weird. Like, he
Oh.
loves to get weird. He loves, like, the cryptid, weird lore mythos. Like, it's good. He always is doing something that's unexpected, not because of shock value, but
Hmm.
because it's just a weird series. Like, I was trying to explain this series to my husband, and I basically said, it's like anime Scooby Doo meets Twin Peaks. And he was like, what? And I was like, anime Scooby Doo plus Twin Peaks. And he was like, yeah, no, I think I get it. So we went to go see this in theaters this past weekend, and he was so sold. Oh my God, it was
Oh, awesome.
ridiculous. And it was
Yeah.
also really um, gratifying to see. I mean, part of the reason, I do also agree. I wish there had been more showings for more
Hmm.
accessibility, but the showing that I went to, at least on Friday, was packed. I mean, it was a
Oh,
bunch
that's awesome.
of people that were there to see Don to Don. And they were all super excited. I mean, it was a very lively audience that I saw the film with. The animation looked spectacular on the big screen. For those that are obviously interested in watching Don to Don, on television, it is coming out. Is October 4th? Is that
Yeah, I believe so. It is coming out on both Crunchyroll and Netflix.
Yes,
So
and
they.
and Hulu will also be streaming. I mean,
Mhm,
Don to Don is gonna be streaming just about everywhere that you
mhm,
can access it. And Netflix is again doing the weekly release schedule like we saw with Delicious and Dungeon. So that is also extremely gratifying.
mhm,
Um, really, man, it's hard. Like, again, I don't want to like blow smoke up, Momo or Okarun, but I really do feel like in terms of kind of this new gen of animation and shonen specifically animation we're seeing, as Nick has said many times on this podcast, I will speak for him because he has said this before, that, a lot of people didn't pay attention to Demon Slayer until, we were
mhm,
getting a little bit towards the end of season one where the animation with UFO Table just popped off. The thing that I love about Dandadan is, episode one is gorgeous. But
Immediately, yeah.
as we head into episode three, the animation goes from like really good to phenomenal. Um, and that's not even mentioning the voice acting. The Japanese
Mhm.
cast of this is amazing, which, by the way, we have to make the connection because the Japanese VA for Okarun is the voice of Tanjiro in Demon Slayer.
Oh, there you go.
So,
Yeah.
we
Oh.
even have that like inherited legacy. So, I'm definitely, man, it's really hard. The October season, the fall season for 2024 is packed. I do not
So
envy
much.
Nick as he is working through our preview for the podcast and for comic book, but I think I've had this position and this stance pretty firmly, out on this show. Don to Don is for sure my number one watch for the fall
Mhm.
season. And the reactions to the theatrical premiere have been nothing short of excellent. So it's kind of one of those things where, like, again, I don't want to blow smoke. I don't want to overhype something, because sometimes you get to the point that people will be like, "Oh, I don't want to watch it. I don't want to get it. I don't want to be let down." I can very confidently say Dandadan will not let you down. So,
Oh yeah. Oh, you'd kind of mentioned the animation and stuff. The fight, and this doesn't really spoil anything, but like one of the fights that I absolutely love was that one against the sumo that was all in black and white.
mhm,
Oh, so good. You had also mentioned the how amazing the animation in the third episode was, because I wanted to talk about this one scene that I absolutely loved, which is where Turbo Granny is what I can only describe as enveloping the stall of a bathroom, and how like I that's one of the big selling points I remember of the manga, was that scene, and how
mhm.
Science Saru is able to kind of like transition that and how that works. Just mind-blowing. You said a lot during your review, like, I don't want to overhype this, but I will totally overhype this.
It's
I
good,
think that
and you
this
won't have to eat crow on that one.
I totally don't have to eat crow on it, because yeah, no, it's really like, I do wish that this had been released, as kind of you had said, that this had been released more in theaters, because it
Mhm.
looks so good on a giant screen.
Yeah.
Just looks amazing.
Well, I do want to plug in really quickly before we take our break. G Kids has also announced that it is going to be bringing Look Back into theaters here in the
Oh,
United
nice, yeah.
States. If you are not aware of Look Back, it is the anime film adaptation of Tatsuki Fujimoto's one-shot manga that he released, I believe, in 2021. It is a gorgeous manga one shot. You can read it
Mhm.
online through Viz Media's app. They're shown in Jump app, but I will just stress, G Kids is bringing it. It will be airing early and screening in theaters ahead of time in Los Angeles and New York City,
Mhm.
October 4th and 5th, but then it will be nationwide at select theaters on the 6th and 7th. Again, that's another movie where the animation phenomenal. I mean, I cannot stress it enough. The movie is live in Japan, and it is, already one of the top rated films of, anime films or just films in general for like
Mhm.
for the past year. Um, so if you get the opportunity amidst the busy October fall season to check out Look Back, please do. So
Mhm.
with that said, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the recent bad news Berserk fans got and why fan anime projects are in a little bit of legal trouble right now. So stay
Mhm.
tuned. Welcome back to Anime Initiative. I am Megan Peters. I am your host here. Again, we are back from our break where we did a pretty in-depth news rundown,
Mhm.
talking about everything from Dandadan to Studio Ghibli to Bleach, and now we are here at Evan's favorite topic, Berserk.
S-
So, it's
Sometimes
only
favorite. Sometimes favorite.
favorite, but mostly a favorite. I mean, you just got a big Berserk tattoo, so I feel
Yeah,
like
I did.
I am free to say, whether it's good news or bad news. And
Mm.
unfortunately, it seems like we're leaning a little bit towards the latter today. So
Mhm.
it's only right for me to throw this to you, Evan. Tell me, what is
Yeah.
the big drama with Berserk right now?
Yeah, so this is actually a topic that I did such a deep dive on. And this is effectively I did a deep dive on this because I'm a giant fan of Berserk. Obviously, as Megan said, I got a tattoo about a month ago, covers my entire left leg. But aside from that, also, there has been some controversy when it comes to Berserk fan animations that have been made in I want to say like recent years, recent months. And to start, we need to do like a quick breakdown of the different fan animations that are out there, because when I saw our topic, I was like, okay, what falls under what? Okay, so there's Studio Taka. Studio Taka is a fan production studio that is responsible for the Berserk motion comic, and you can find it on YouTube. And what that does is that it effectively takes a lot of the manga beats and kind of reanimates them. So it takes some of the original artwork. On top of that, there's Studio Eclipse, which was making a new anime sequence that was dubbed the Berserk the Black Swordsman, which had released a trailer that had gotten over 4.4 million views so far. And then on top of that, there's Studio Arch, which is working on which had created a fan animation that effectively acts as a season 2 to the original 1997 Berserk anime series that was created by OLM Incorporated. They had released one episode so far. So breaking down the controversy that revolves around this, and this goes a lot into like fan animation in general. One of the things that this started with Studio Gaga and the publishers of Berserk releasing a statement that stated that specifically called out Studio Eclipse. Now, it didn't call out the other two in their official statement, but it called out Studio Eclipse. And the interesting part about this, because I read this about a dozen times. I reread the statement because to start with, it was kind of a little strange in terms of how they worded it. They didn't necessarily say, Studio Gaga didn't necessarily say, hey, we are we want Studio Eclipse to stop this completely. They said that the work of Berserk the Black Swordsman is not an official release. We do not endorse it, but it didn't call for like legal action to be taken. So a lot of people were just kind of wondering, well, what does this mean for it? And it got into the ethics of fan animes in general. And normally, when it comes to fan animes, like obviously there's these fan anime studios, which can sometimes be just one person. It can be like a number of people that are getting together and kind of doing voice work and the animation itself. They will release something and they never say, okay, now you pay us to see this. But what they do a lot of the time is that they will create like a campaign, a funded campaign, which is on Patreon or Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And they will say, hey, if you want to help us in terms of helping to create this fan animation, here's where you go. And so that's kind of a morally gray area when it comes to like, is this right? They're promoting something that isn't necessarily theirs, and they are making money from it in a way. And I looked into a lot of like the behind the scenes stuff. I'm not going to talk about any of that just because there's a lot of rumors that are swirling about Studio Eclipse itself and all this other stuff. But it goes into the idea of obviously with Studio Taka and Studio Eclipse, they have both said that they're stopping. I don't think that we've received an official announcement from Studio Arch whether or not they're going to stop their production of the Berserk 97 season 2 stuff. But at the end of the day, it seems like they will. I think that like this was effectively a warning shot that was sent over the bow by Studio Gaga that was like effectively like, hey, we're saying in the nicest official way possible that we're not big fans of this happening. And yeah, that's kind of a rundown of the controversy in general.
Mm-hmm. One excellent rundown. I think what's so interesting about this kind of situation, one, no one really saw it coming because
Hmm.
Berserk is a massive franchise. Let's not get that wrong. It is a very
Yeah.
legendary IP. Creator Kentaro Miura, may he rest in peace. He created
Hmm.
a very, very, I don't even know what the right word is. I mean, I don't want to say raw again, but like it is a very
Oh,
primal, raw
yeah.
series. It's got action, it's got emotion, a lot of it's dark. It's a heavy series. It's a heavy
Hmm.
series to take in.
Heavy.
And the manga, of course, speaks for itself in terms of, its quality. But one
Hmm.
thing that I feel like has to be kind of iterated is that Berserk has not been given its kind of appropriate dues in the anime space.
Yes.
There have been, you know, various anime projects, official anime projects created and produced for Berserk over the years, but unfortunately, kind of the ones that really stick with fans, like there's like the adaptation from like 2016,
Hmm.
2017, that's like mostly entirely done in CGI.
Yes.
At that time, CGI anime is not what it is today, and it has some of the worst animation of just a series as a whole I've
Yeah.
ever witnessed. And that was something, I covered a lot writing, in my career, in anime. And I couldn't help but think, I was like, why is Berserk being treated like this? And, we've seen this before, there's franchises like Kingdom, which are
Hmm.
hugely successful manga franchises, incredibly iconic, incredibly profitable and lucrative for publishers. But the anime adaptations that's been given have never reached that same, height or
Yeah.
expectation that the fandom, wanted to see. So Berserk has fallen into that category because if Berserk could get a anime adaptation of the level and prestige that the manga carries,
Oh man.
it would be massive. I mean, it would be an absolutely massive anime.
It's
Uh,
it's it's one of the things that it's kind of like the same scenario, and ironically enough, this series is somewhat touted on the same level as Berserk, and rightfully so, which is Vagabond. Vagabond is a series that people have not created an anime adaptation for because it seems impossible to do so.
mhm.
It's the people are intimidated by it, and to an extent I think that like I've done so much research on the 2016 Berserk one, and as you mentioned, it comes down to a lot the CG animation. It comes down to a lot of the time schedules, as well as this was an early work for the director on it, so he
Yeah.
wasn't able to really get as much that he wanted on the screen as he could. But I mean, ironically enough, the 97 version is still my favorite to this day because it
I think it's
effectively
everybody's favorite
it's
version.
yeah, because I
If
mean,
they
and
they
the
have to pick one. Yeah.
it effectively copy and pastes a lot of the like I mean, it copy and pastes some of the imagery, and it just holds on it for like with some audio in the background. I've heard places refer to it as a motion comic before, and I wouldn't
It's got
necessarily.
that slideshow quality to it.
Yeah,
Kind of very
yeah,
PowerPoint. But you
yeah,
know what? It still at least looks better than, what we've been given before. So, that I feel like has absolutely led to the rise of obviously these, three fairly prolific fan anime and fan projects that were,
hmm,
being created for Berserk. I mean, obviously all of these were nonprofit,
hmm,
but it gets into the weeds when these studios, these indie studios, these fan run studios and initiatives, are getting funding through Patreon or,
hmm,
you know, tips or things like that. They're not profiting specifically
yeah,
off the Berserk IP and the project that they're working on that is, not been authorized and it's not official in any capacity. But when that project is what your initiative and studio is known best for, then you're getting into the legal weeds because
yeah,
you become synonymous. If you support X studio, then you are supporting this Berserk like this Berserk project. That's where we start running into kind of this legal gray area because you do also have to consider, you know, obviously copyright laws, trademark, IP protection, all of that is, you know, one thing in America, but it's different in Japan. It's different
oh yeah,
across countries. And if the team at Studio Gaga is coming from a IP protection space in Japan. They can very easily kind of bring that legal, trajectory and that their legal recourses against whatever is kind of being made, even if it's not in Japan. I mean, we've seen that kind of IP protection and legal rulings work against things like piracy and leakers and things like that in anime and manga. So the fan anime is where we start to get a little weird. When immediately when this news came out from Studio Gaga, I don't know what this says about me, but the first thing I thought of was Anne Rice. Because for those people who do not know, do you know where I'm going with this?
I think so. Well, my I thought of Stephanie Meyer originally.
Oh, well, I mean,
no,
you're
Anne
not
Rice
wrong. So Anne Rice is the author behind the Interview with the Vampire. She kind of that is her franchise, that is her baby, and for years, I mean decades, you could not find fan fiction for Interview with the Vampire. You could not find any kind of fan projects based on that series because Anne Rice was notoriously against that kind of content. She wholeheartedly disavowed fan fiction, fan art, anything, fan made movies, anything like that. You could not do it because it was essentially kind of the looming threat of a cease and desist or, litigation. That has since changed, in recent years. So, as soon as I heard about, Studio Gaga taking that hard stance against that fan project, I was like, I see we're going the Anne Rice route with approaching this. And again, it's hard for me to say as a consumer, let me say this. As a consumer, I think that fan anime, as long as the creators of these projects have a diverse portfolio and they're not profiting directly off the IP, I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah.
Especially in an anime space where there is so much, like the anime space is really pushed forward by the fans. I've always said that it is the conversation on social media, it's the conversation in person and at conventions that really drives the growth of anime. I mean, it was word of mouth that planted the seeds for a bunch of people to watch anime starting in 2020, and we've seen kind of the kind of fruits of that labor in recent years with how much not just the anime but the manga industry has grown. And looking at titles like Berserk that haven't been given their flowers and given their dues in the anime space, I can understand bringing a group of passionate fans together who want to exercise their love of the series to create something that they feel reflects Berserk in the way it deserves. If they're not profiting off it directly and they're not selling merchandise around it, and the company or the fans that are doing this have a diverse portfolio, so they're not just saying, hey, support our team because that's actually supporting this, project, that I don't see an issue with that. I was always really annoyed about the kind of the interview. I really loved Interview with the Vampire when I was a kid, and I really wanted to read fan fiction, and I was really upset that none existed or I couldn't access it. So like that's kind of how I feel about Berserk. I feel like if anything, it's bringing publicity to this series that when people, at least a lot of people, when they think of Berserk in terms of anime, they laugh. They think about the manga and they're in awe. But it feels like some of these fan projects were starting to turn the tide and start a conversation that could have had a rippling effect in the actual industry to produce an official anime adaptation that actually works.
Yeah.
Now, Studio Gaga is doing this because they are secretly coordinating an anime adaptation behind the scenes, and they don't want these fan anime projects to conflict with the official anime they may or may not be working on. Okay, I understand now, but go ahead and please announce it so we can stop freaking out.
I think that I will say one of the times I was burned the most on Berserk specifically wasn't even like, yeah, I was burned on the 2016 and 20 and following subsequent 2017 seasons. But one of the things I was burned the most on was when they released Berserk Memorial Edition, and we were following this. I was writing for the site at the time when it was released. And one of the things is that they released a mysterious countdown that was leading to something while Berserk Memorial Edition was happening. For those who don't know what Berserk Memorial Edition was, it was an anime series that took footage from those trilogy of movies that was created by Studio 4C, and just kind of spliced them together. It added some new stuff, and it revisited the Golden Age arc. And they had this mysterious countdown that was going down. And I thought, this is for sure going to be the announcement of a new anime series. How could they not? Like, this is clearly going to be like, it's going to come out right around the same time as the season finale of the Memorial Edition, surely. And when that countdown ended, it showed a Blu-ray for the Memorial Edition, and that was the big reveal. And everybody was just like, oh, like Berserk fans just want another attempt at this. I think that we have been able to see one of the things that I bring up is another series that I love, which is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which has been helmed by one studio, David Production, who are clearly giant fans of the source material and do all that they can in terms of making sure that this is given its due. And that has helped JoJo's Bizarre Adventure become one of the movers and shakers in the anime universe in general, has been that anime adaptation. And people are hoping for the same thing from Berserk in general, and hoping that some studio will take it. Now, I might be jumping the gun in terms of our conversation, but when I saw this originally, one of the things that came to mind for me was Dragon Ball in general, which Dragon Ball receives huge amounts of fan animations. There was this animation that
Super Saiyan 5.
Super Saiyan 5, which ties into what I'm a little bit of what I'm going to talk about. Well, to start, one fan animation that came out that I absolutely loved was called Dragon Ball Legend, which was just done by one guy. And it's like Goku and Vegeta, and they're fighting Broly. It's an amazing one. You can check it out. I think the way that animator did it in terms of just releasing it, like, I'm one guy, I just made this thing. I love Dragon Ball. Here, enjoy. But one of the things that FanWorks was able to do in terms of Dragon Ball, and Megan, you mentioned Super Saiyan 5. Super Saiyan 5 originally started in a little side series that was known as Dragon Ball AF. That was worked on by a little artist named Toyotaro, who would use the work that he created on this fan series to elevate himself to become the artist on the official spin-off series, Dragon Ball Heroes, eventually then becoming brought up to the big leagues and becoming the artist on Dragon Ball Super that he continues to be to this day. And the FanWorks were able to give him that opportunity. And I think that that's a reason. Again, I don't know the background in terms of the stuff that he did for Dragon Ball AF originally, but I would imagine he didn't have a campaign that was like, hey, give me, we could use some funds in order to create this fan comic. But there's a place for fan anime. There's a place for fan projects, and it helps, as you said, Megan, it helps steer the conversation a lot of the time. And I think that, like, it's important that we have that moving forward.
Right. And I feel like the kind of creation of taking an IP into your own hands, obviously, doing so for, nonprofit, under fair use, giving credit where credit is due, and, having a diverse portfolio, those are all things that, can, make a fan anime's production work really well. And we've seen, like you just said, there have been many Dragon Ball fan anime projects. There have been a lot of like fan anime projects that were like an indie studio is creating a live action adaptation or take on, an IP. We've seen a ton of those for Dragon Ball. We've seen them for Naruto. We've seen them for, even One Piece before Netflix kind of came in with its live action adaptation. I felt like these kind of bigger projects and, more from the ground up creations felt like a really natural progression of kind of the AMV craze that, anime really bolstered in, the 90s to the early aughts. Man, I watched so many Linkin Park, Naruto.
Oh God, I was just about to say
there's so many of them, or like there, so like it feels like that's a natural progression of, fans taking the anime content, recreating it into its own thing, then fans creating things like, the abridged series, things like Dragon Ball abridged, Yu-Gi-Oh abridged, things like that. And now kind of transitioning it into making, tributes that are, a fan anime, whether it's animated or a live action project. I think there's absolutely a space for it. I think ultimately, as a consumer, I feel one way about it. I would probably feel differently if I was the rights holder to an IP and felt like my IP was in danger because
Yeah.
of these projects. I don't feel like what these Berserk projects were doing particularly endangered Berserk in any
Oh,
way.
not at all. Yeah.
But there may be things going on in the background that we're just not aware of in terms of Studio Gaga's plans for Berserk. So ultimately, I think it comes down to honoring, if given a notice by the IP creators or rights holders, kind of, following those marching orders. I think that's kind of the best you can do. And, especially in the passing of, Kentaro Miura, the team that is overseeing Berserk is incredibly protective of what the series looks like. So I can't say I'm surprised, and I can't say that I blame, the team for, pushing forward with this kind of cease and desist threat. But I do think it's a shame. I think that these Berserk titles generated a lot of positive conversation about the IP itself. And hopefully that pans out in some sort of official way for Berserk moving forward. And in terms of fan anime, as we are continuing to see this rise in these projects, given access to technology, Final Cut, and just better education in general of how to create, not just live action content, but also technology helping bring together fan animators who, want to hone their skills and create these fan projects. I think there's absolutely a place for them. And I love supporting them. The only place that I get a little icky is when, they do start saying send us subscribe $5 a month on Patreon.
Yeah.
We'll send you stickers. Well, at that point, am I supporting you and the one project you're working on, or do you have several things that are going on, original and fan based, that kind of dissolves that legal to a degree? So it's a complicated issue, and I'm just a little sad. I think those Berserk projects are cool, but ultimately, you got to answer to Studio Gaga.
Yeah, it's I mean, at the end of the day, it's their rodeo. And I think that I like you, I think I did watch I watched all of those fan animation. I thought they did a very good job in terms of kind of taking the material. And I mean obviously it wasn't on the same level as anime studios in general, but they were doing their own thing, and it was clear they were passionate about the source material. But again, it's such a morally gray area that it's just hey, and it's not like Studio Gaga isn't passionate. I mean, they are. they spent, after Miura's death, they spent a year torturing themselves about the idea of whether or not they should continue the series or not, and they came to the decision that in order to honor his memory, we have to give the fans an ending. So yeah.
And I think part of that deliberation, that them taking so long to do that deliberation, very carefully thinking it over, that's why I'm not necessarily surprised that now the notice has come down publicly that maybe let's not do fan projects. But either way, here between the two of us, we're sad to see it go, but there is definitely room in the fandom for other projects like that to exist that just don't feature guts. I'll say that much. But yeah, that's the end of our show today. We have tons of good stuff coming, as we are moving towards October. Obviously, Nick will be back next week, and we will start going over our fall 2024 preview. So please look forward to that. If you want to talk to myself or Evan about Berserk or Dandadan or anything like that, you can find us on social media. You can find me at Megan W. Peters. Evan, where can they find you?
And you can find me on all the socials at EV Comedy.
Awesome. Also, if you just want to listen to us do our show all the time, we do our, anime initiative live on Tuesdays. You can watch us on Twitch, chat with us here. And then, of course, you can find episodes moving forward wherever you get your favorite podcasts, Apple, Spotify, etc. So give us a listen, leave us a review, let us know what you're thinking about ahead of the fall season. And if you want other shows, comicbook.com has plenty. We are under, we honestly just have so much news right now heading into the fall. We have Comic Book Nation, we have Quick Save, we have, a wild podcast has appeared. The list keeps going, pull list. There's so many I'm forgetting. But if you want to talk about all things geeky and nerdy and listen to our conversations, please give us a listen. So until next week, thank you for joining the Anime Initiative. We'll talk to y'all later.